Notes works. Wonderful. I just wanted to get this streaming, and then I will save the recording so you can watch this after. Awesome. Kevin, thanks for joining us. What do you want to get out of today? Okay, cool. Kevin, I'll check in with you after. All right, let's just jump into it then. All right, everybody. So thanks for joining us today on 5 ways to improve leadership team performance. My name's Anthony Taylor. I'll go a little bit about who I am more later on. But one of the things that I've been dealing with a lot lately is I've been working with leadership teams beyond their strategic planning sessions and really just in teams. And so, for the past 3-4 years, SME Strategy has been doing a lot of research, a lot of work on how to evolve like team performance, team collaboration. And we've been like continuously trying to boil it down to something that's really, really simple. And I'd like to leave you today with some tips, actionable things that you can do to put in place. Some of it's going to be conceptual that you can look and say, hey, I can improve this broadly. And some of it is going to be specific. We also have a scorecard that I'll provide a link for in the follow-up email that will help you assess your team's performance in these 5 areas. The purpose of it isn't for you to say, oh, we're good here, we're bad here. It's really to begin to engage in a conversation with your people about their overall performance, but not in a way that gets met with resistance or negativity. Rather, a place where you can say, hey, where can we improve here? So thanks. I appreciate everybody that showed up earlier to just talk to me a little bit, because my goal for doing these webinars, our goals for doing these webinars is to just make sure that we're providing as much value to you specifically. We get 20,000 visitors to SME Strategy every month. And when somebody downloads a form or registers for a webinar like you did, I look you up. I literally look up hundreds of people a week. I follow you on LinkedIn, and I really want to know what you're up to. And so I genuinely want to make today as specific and valuable as possible. So please, let me know what that is, and I'm here to serve you. So if we haven't met before, I'm the CEO at SME Strategy Consulting. I've led hundreds of strategic planning sessions. I've done hundreds of interviews with CEOs on our strategy and leadership podcast. I'm an executive coach to organizations, SMEs, and $100 million businesses. And I've written the book on strategy, how to get your people, strategy, and culture on the same page. And one of the important things in terms of how we view strategy is, of course, we do work in strategic plans. But the real work that happens with a team isn't the document. It's the environment around the document. And so really what I want to highlight today or discuss or give you a couple quick tips before, in the length of time that your coffee is still warm, that you can take away and implement with your team. So got 5 things plus a bonus thing. I want to keep it relatively simple, relatively direct. And these things have guided me in my career for 12 years plus working specifically in strategy. So the number one thing, and I won't say they're number one, I think that they're all important when they work in concert, is a clear vision. A clear vision. And what we ask, and you might have heard me talk about it, is like, if success was a place, how would we know how would we know if we got there? Or another way to think about it is like, what does good look like? I just did a strategic planning session last week with a team. And for them to say, hey, we want to grow, versus, hey, we want to get to 30 million with 3% profitability, and we want to make sure our team is communicating and we have these partnerships over there. Literally in the 3-4 days since that workshop, since the 2-day offsite, people have been so much more engaged with the future, because they all not only know what it is, but they have the clear alignment in terms of that they are all going to the same place. So I'm going to use the word clarity a lot of times here. And clarity is important because there's kind of conceptual and specific. But if everybody knows what success is, then they can confidently move towards it. If they don't have confidence, it's going to take time, it's going to take money, it's going to take energy, it's going to take second guessing. And so the ability for you in your teams to get clarity in terms of what success looks like, not open to interpretation, will be one of the number one things I think you could do to create breakthrough performance with your team. And so if I talk to many of you are in organizations, you're not necessarily the CEO of your organization. So it might be a question that you ask your CEO. If we're totally successful, how will we know? What does that success truly look like? And does our entire team share that success? If you have gone through a strategic plan process recently and you came up with a vision, is it clear? Is it open to interpretation? Is it specific? Does it have kind of road marks along the way? If you got to that point, let's say 3 years or 5 years from now, would you be able to say, yep, did that, or we're this, we're that? If you're not able to really tell what it is, or if it's open to interpretation, consider going back to the drawing board and saying, hey, how can we bring some clarity into that? If it says we're delivering excellent customer service, what does excellent customer service means? If it's saying best in class, what does best in class really mean? And so clarity above all in terms of the vision. And then I can talk more about how we look at one destination later on, but that's not the point. Number two, if you want to improve leadership team performance, clear communication. Now, clear communication is one of those kind of like somewhat obvious things. But one of the traps I see teams get is they think they're communicating clearly, but what they don't take into consideration is everything that's in their head, the truths, the assumptions, the beliefs, they're communicating out, but then those assumptions might not be the same with someone else. As in, let's say you're in HR and you know how long it takes to find a candidate, and you know how challenging and expensive it can be, and you know how the market is, and you know how many people are available for that position. And all of those calculations are in your head. And then you communicate, hey, here's how long it's going to take to make that hire, and here's how much it's going to cost. When you communicate that information back to your team, they have none of that information. They don't have all of the stuff that's going on in your head. They only have their biases, their perspectives, their assumptions, their truths. And so you're not operating on the same playing field in terms of knowing. Now, multiply that by 6 or 7 or 8, and you're trying to make decisions as a team. If not everybody has the same amount of information, not everybody is sharing the same truths, not sharing the same assumptions, and then your communication is going to get muddied. It's going to become unclear, and it's going to create frustration. So I say that because it's an ongoing practice. But if you can help your team communicate clearly by including specifics, by including kind of the math that you need, the assumptions that you're making, and then challenging other people's assumptions, it'll help your communication be way more effective because everybody will kind of be operating at the same plane. It's one of the challenges with asynchronous communication is you don't often have time to have the context around most things. All you see is the information that goes across. And so when you have, let's say, a CEO who doesn't like having meetings because they feel like it's a waste of time, well, you're losing the richness of a communication that helps the teams make decisions. Another one is around that creates unclear communication is different expectations for things. I expect a thing takes 4 months. You expect that thing to take 9 months. We could be communicating about the project, but if we're unclear about, all of the other information that goes into our assumptions, it's going to create communication breakdowns. As a senior leader, which many of you are, you probably spend 80 or 90% of your time communicating. And so if you can improve that area of clarity, of specificity, and I didn't talk about frequency at all, but you're going to be more effective at building a team around you. So how do you do that? Is challenge your team when they're talking about things to ask clarifying questions, to be curious about what they're saying so that you can make sure that you're fully understanding your point or you're fully understanding their point, and then they can fully understand yours. By probing, by testing assumptions, you're going to be way more effective as a team because you're not going to have to go back several months or weeks later and say, hey, like, what about that thing? I thought that we discussed this and this is what was going to happen. It's like, no, we're on track. You just don't know what on track means. So try to challenge assumptions, try to make everything more explicit. And as a team, as you develop that muscle and focus on making sure everybody has the information they need, you're going to be more effective. Number three, clear measures of success. This is a killer in strat plans. I wanted to say clear goals. I want to talk about clear goals so that people could say, hey, like KPIs, objectives, OKRs, that kind of thing. But I think it goes in a corollary to clear vision. Is if we don't know what good looks like from the level of priorities or actions, then we're all going to be taking different approaches to make our projects a success. So if we say beyond vision, we say, hey, this project launch, we want this project launch to be successful or product launch to be successful. Well, what does that product launch being successful mean? Does that mean that we're selling $10,000, $100,000, $1 million? And by what time, by what date? What are the kind of milestones for it? A company that I know launched a new product line, actually, specifically. And after a month and a half, they don't think it's working. They're like, hey, I'm not sure if this is working for us. We should probably pull the plug. Well, because there was no clear measure of success within that project, that it's somewhat arbitrary. Heck, I've been guilty of leading projects and canceling them too fast because I didn't take the time out on the front end to say, hey, this is what good would look like. This is what okay would look like. This is what bad would look like. And this is when we kind of would decide to pull the plug. So on specific projects, on initiatives, the clearer you can make your success with KPIs, key performance indicators, SMART goals, OKRs, whatever you want to use. If you and your partners, your team, your leadership team, your CEO, whoever key stakeholders are able to establish clear measures of success, you're going to know, not guess, that you are successful with your plan. One of the big failings I see in strategic plans holistically is when they set objectives, outcomes, without measures. Because at the end of the 3 years, you say, hey, did we actually accomplish this strategic priority? I think so. I feel like we did. Well, we've kind of done it. What a clear measures of success does is it helps you refine your actions. It refines everything you do and how many resources you need to put towards it. So if you have a strategic plan, if you've got any projects going on, check, say, hey, are the measures of success clear? Are they open to interpretation? And will we know at what point we have to kind of reassess our plan or reassess our trajectory? And all of that will tie into resource allocation. If you don't have clear measures of success, it's going to be really, really hard to tie funding and resources to it, people or otherwise. Fourth is clear expectations. And I wanted to talk about this. We talked about clarity in terms of vision, in terms of goals, in terms of communication, but I wanted to relate this from a people perspective. So I find that in teams, so if we look at team dynamics, and we talked about like dysfunctions of the team and what have you, is that most frustrations happen not because of the thing that happened, but it was against someone's expectation. I expect you to communicate with me that way. I expect you to, live the same way that I do. I expect you to have the same work ethic. I expect you to have the same quality of work. I expect you to do this my way instead of you doing it your way. And then we get frustrated with one another because you didn't do it the way that I would do it. Well, it's not reasonable to expect that, but as human beings, that's what we do. We have our own heuristic of what good looks like. And so as team members, especially working remote, especially working across countries, setting clear expectations, clear behaviors, clear accountabilities with each other will help you reduce frustration and increase your ultimate effectiveness. And so all of this goes to being proactive instead of reactive in terms of what you're looking for. The easiest way to do this is by formalizing your values and behaviors and articulating what that looks like. But let's say you use a tool like a team charter to say, hey, how do we want this project team to operate? Can you get back to me in a week? That's okay. Or do I expect you to get back to me by the end of day, every day? Do we have the permission to challenge each other? Or are we going to avoid conflict? Different people have different ways of working together. And as you're setting up new teams, if you're a company that's growing, you're bringing people into this environment. And if the expectations of one another are unclear, then you're going to have problems. And it's going to erode your team's ability to be effective because you're spending time dealing with interpersonal issues and dropped balls versus focusing on moving forward and being proactive. One of the things, I was talking to somebody the other day, I was doing some coaching, and this person's been working in their team for a couple of years, and they got dropped into the team, as in it wasn't their choice to join that team. In fact, the entire team was put together because of someone else. And so they were forced to work together, and they were forced effectively to make it work. Now they're at a point where they have to kind of recommit to the team, and all of the interpersonal stuff is coming up because now they have to choose, hey, do I want to work with this person? Do I think that we can make a good team moving forward? And so without being able to align on expectations and make it explicitly clear, they're going to have a hard time being effective. And so it's often not hard. The hard part is, are you willing to be uncomfortable of communicating what you expect of yourself, what you expect of others? A conversation that happens a lot in our team around equity, diversity, and inclusion. We say, hey, what are our expectations as to what that means as a company? We're going to put it on our value set, but what does that mean when we talk about it internally? Are we willing to have those conversations, even if it makes us uncomfortable? Because that's what we care about. So if your team doesn't have clear expectations in terms of how you want to work together, you're going to have a bad time. The last one I want to talk about, plus before my bonus tip, is clear priorities. And this happens at every strategic planning session. Most human beings are action oriented. They want to do stuff. They often forget why they're doing stuff. Or everybody is thinking from their own individual hat. This is what my department is. This is what my department's doing. This is what your department's doing. This is what their department's doing. And so everybody has their own priorities and everybody's working on their own thing. But if you can take it a level up and make sure everybody has their organizational hat when they work on things, and say, hey, what are we focused on as a collective? As I share this story, it reminds me of, like, if you ever seen the image with the two dogs in a leash. You know, one is trying to move over here to pull something, one is trying to move over here to pull something, and because there's a leash, neither one makes progress. When you have a team that has clear and aligned priorities, you have like, okay, this dog comes over here, we go this way. Okay, that dog comes over here, then we go that way. Priorities doesn't mean we're not doing everything. It just means we're not doing everything right now. And so as a team, when you really think as a team, it's saying, hey, what is the greater good of the group? And how do we prioritize what makes the most impact for the group so that we can have impact now? It might be this person and that person and that person that are really pivotal to the work that we're doing currently. Next year, it might be you and that person and that person. So we're shifting. But if there's no clear system for prioritization, then your team is always going to be fighting for their thing because they're thinking about it from their perspective versus the team perspective. So how can you create clear priorities, and how can you allocate the resources within your team to make sure that those priorities are met effectively? So this is a bonus tip I was thinking about. I said, well, what does it really come down to at the end of the day? End of the day, if you want to improve your team's performance and your leadership team, but really like within the entire organization, it's really two things, but it comes down to one. It's trust. Now, it might be cliche, and it kind of is cliche, but it is the truest thing that I have found. If you do not fully and completely trust your team, then it's going to be impossible to challenge. It's going to be impossible to have those tough conversations. It's going to be impossible to work with them. I believe that everything I talked about earlier, clear vision, clear expectation, clear communication, and so on, supports the trust. But as a leader, as a CEO specifically, the number one thing I would work on is helping my team trust each other so that they can have an environment where they can fail, where they can contribute, where they can innovate. If you don't have trust, you can't innovate, you can't challenge each other, you can't contribute, and you don't even feel like you're part of a team. When you see people that quit managers and quit jobs, it's because they don't either trust their manager, they don't trust their boss, they don't trust their colleagues, they don't trust that they're in the right place. So trust is an incredibly important piece of leadership team effectiveness, and I don't think it's talked about enough. The plus for the breakthrough conversations is anytime you have a lack of clarity, a lack of uncertainty, if you're having that breakdown, then there's likely a conversation that needs to follow, a conversation about that issue. If you imagine the issue is right in the middle, your team just tries to work around the issue. They will avoid it. They will sweep it under the rug. And it just means that everybody needs to take extra steps every time to avoid that issue. To me, the only way that you can get through, like over an issue, is through it, not around it. And then you break through those conversations. I had a conversation with an $800 million company, and all of their business function leaders the other day, and they're like, hey, we got this really big revenue target. Like, how the heck are we going to get it? Well, the conversation that just need to happen would be, okay, let's test our assumptions. Let's test, what we need to know. Let's challenge each other. Let's make sure that we're communicating clear understanding. And we didn't solve it in that couple hours, but everybody felt more grounded because they say, okay, great. I feel so much better having an understanding in terms of where we're at, what we need to work on. So everything as a leadership team is just a series of breakthrough conversations until you get to wherever you want to go. Focus those conversations on building trust and you'll be successful. Sometimes it's just dealing with the conflict. Hey, you said you're going to do this last week and you didn't do it. Sometimes it's got a lot more baggage. Hey, 2 years ago, you ate my bagel in the break room and I've hated your guts since. And I apologize. That's on me. That's not on you. You'd be surprised how much of that stuff is very, very real for people in teams. And until you get through it, it erodes the foundation of your team's ability to be successful. Because you can't build on a foundation of lack of trust. So how to improve that? Have the conversations, do the work. One of the things that we recommend, in terms of it is just strategic alignment. This is the process that we follow when we do strategic planning. We walk through this process over 2 or 3 days with teams, and it tends to cover all of those areas: clear vision, clear goals, clear communication, clear expectations, clear accountabilities, clear priorities. And it helps the transfer of information. So if you're in your strategic planning process, if you're completing your strategic planning process, do you have enough systems set up to have those conversations on a regular basis? A lot of teams that fail in their strategic plans, they do their strategic plan and they revisit it 3 years later, or they might revisit it once a year. But those conversations need to happen weekly and monthly to have those breakthroughs. And then for us, it's, again, aligning the vision, the mission, the values, the strategic priorities, the goals and actions. So everybody understands from top down, bottom up, what they need to do to move it forward. So in summary, how do you move your team forward? Clear vision, clear goals or measures of success, clear communication, clear expectation, clear priorities. All of those things will support you building trust in your organization. And the way to build the trust in the conversation, have those breakthrough conversations, tackle the issues that you need to tackle, whether that's on a one-off basis or in a strategic planning process like this one that our team at SME Strategy can facilitate for you. So if you would like to work with us, you got more questions about it, please let me know. If you're watching the replay, inside the replay, you'll have a link to our scorecard that you could do with your team to begin the conversations of asking, do we have a clear vision? Do we have clear priorities? How do we communicate? So that instead of bringing it up as a problem, you can break it up as an opportunity for your team to improve, to work together, to move forward. So I appreciate you being here. I told you I'd get you out in and out in half an hour. So I'm pretty close to that. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing. And I'm just going to stop the recording, but please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And if you're on the call, I'll just open it up for Q&A right now. All right, everybody. Thanks so much.